Hey Harrison, what's going on, man? Welcome to the interview.
Hey Gabe, what's good?
Yeah, all good,
What's
man.
good?
Well, it's really nice to have you. So, for people out there who don't know who you are, could you tell us who you are and where you're from?
My name is Harrison Tambra. I'm a Nigerian-based environment concept artist. Based in here, I've been working from here. I'm a freelancer.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. So, can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about what got you started in your journey in art, like right from the beginning?
Like, do we go like back, like way back, or do we just
Yeah.
like breeze through?
Well, I
um,
see you're a very prolific artist. You've done a lot of work. So I think we can go back as far as you like, really.
Prolific. Basically, I've been drawing for a bit, for as long as I can remember, and so I've always had this thing. I've always been art inclined, so that led into me drawing more and wanting to push my art career and all that. So that's how, like, maybe since when I was probably 4 or 5, or earlier than that, it depends, because like I used to watch a lot of Batman and all that. So all that propelled me into chasing art as a career. Nothing else, basically. Nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I got into art pretty much the same way through cartoons on TV, and
Mm-hmm.
back in my day, like we didn't have, there was when I was a kid, we didn't have any materials like drawing tablets or anything like that. So I would just take paper and stick it up on the TV screen, and I would just start drawing over the frames because I'd freeze like the VHS, and I would like trace over the drawings to kind of understand like what was going on.
No, I wasn't that crazy. I think the only crazy thing that we probably did was like we'll draw the characters, like cut them out,
Oh
and like
yeah,
use them as like playing toys. Like you cut the character out, like you draw Batman, and you probably draw the Joker and cut them out. And you paint them like,
that's
oh,
so
like
cool. It's like,
beat them all in the battle. Yeah,
yeah, it's like if they don't make the toy range, we can just make our own.
exactly.
Exactly. And now we're designing them, right? Now you and I are like designing these things.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. Like just see like action figures and whatnot. It's way more inspiring now, and I think like the younger kids, like they have a lot to consume. So heaven only knows like what they would produce years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the quality of toys now is so bonkers. Like, it's just can't
Crazy,
even
man.
compare. Like, even the cheapest toys that I see in shops. Like, I was in Japan last year and I bought like this,
Yeah.
must have been like $1, $2 toy. It was like a Gundam mech, and the quality was just mind blowing. I was like, what the hell? It's like comes in this little box like this big, and I would
Mm-hmm.
just like put it together and it looked amazing. It's like, this is crazy.
Like I think the craziest I'd ever seen was like one where it was one for like the Power Rangers, the Red Rangers, right? Where you press a button at the back and the head changes from the helmet of the ranger to his normal head. That's the only crazy one I'd
Jeez.
say was
But
that.
that's still like totally
That
crazy.
yeah, that was back then. Now it's
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
could change the arm, change the pose and all that. So it's so cool,
Yeah, it's
so
like
so cool.
proper Transformers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Cool, man. So, tell us a little bit about like how did you learn how to get into art? Are you completely self-taught, or did you learn from other people, or did you go to like an institution? What's your story around that?
It's crazy though, but basically for digital art in Nigeria, right?
Hmm.
Or like anywhere in Africa currently, I'm not sure, but like people tend to learn by themselves. Like you learn from the internet, you learn from online classes or from anything you find on YouTube. Like if you can afford paying for digital classes, fine, that's awesome. I
Hmm.
did learn like learning the basics of Photoshop from like people around, like when I was like in university environment, people around you learn all that. But for like pushing the specifics of what I'm doing right now, most of it's self-taught and online classes, basically.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
have you realized becoming more of a professional now that you're working in the field, you're doing all these projects? Have you noticed like, hey, if I want to improve, I actually have to take someone's class who's maybe better than me or who has something to offer me? Is that kind of your mentality now when you train outside of work?
Personally, I feel like if anyone can afford learning like from online classes, if you can afford it, go for it. It's the best because like these people are in the industry, right? And they have worked, they have the experience, they know exactly what's needed.
Mm,
Or
mm,
like because I know like art school is super expensive out there. So like if you can learn from like even schoolism on its own, or even your class, it's like on its own one-on-one mentorship. Like you have someone that could take their time to teach you what is really required. then
Yeah.
that's like the best thing. Because like I started having an assumption of what concept art is. And when you get into it, you're like, oh man, like all that assumption you had was totally wrong. And even right
Mm.
now, it's even changing. So it's changing at a very, very rapid pace. So people should like students and even professionals should always
Mm.
be on their toes and try to learn what's really, really required. So like
Yeah.
I had so just to answer your question, I learned from I would prefer you learn people learn from like online classes if they can afford it. If they can't, then maybe buy gumroads or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Maybe even
and
like,
YouTube isn't the thing. I don't for me personally, like get YouTube tutorials like they're not so detailed on what's really needed. Just breeze through the basics, which is fine for a beginner.
mm,
But like if you go in depth, you need to go into one of these Lens Square, one-on-one mentorship, like schoolism, any of that, brainstorm. Like, and there's a pandemic, so well, all you have to do is learn from home.
exactly. Like, what better time than doing it now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the favorite segments that I've started with this series of interviews is to take a look at the guys who I'm interviewing's old stuff, like their old artwork. So
Okay,
let's
right.
let's let's share my screen for a second. Take a look at some of your old artwork that you've been generous enough to share
Mm.
with us today. We're going to dive
Oh,
into the old school guys. We're going to DeviantArt today. We're going to take a look at Harrison's old stuff. Can you believe it?
well,
So I'm
my,
going to share
my
my
old
screen right
stuff
now.
is like super old and different,
Yeah, this is like Harrison's version of bad work, guys. So yeah, it's really good already, right? Like, let's jump in here and take a look, right? I mean, that's pretty solid, right? Like, I see like students leaving like art school with like this level, right? So I think already, like, how
Mhm.
old is this? This is like
Yeah,
2010. That's a long time ago, man. That's 10 years ago.
it's so, yeah, I feel so old.
Should we just jump through?
Yeah, let's go through, man.
This is super cool, man. I feel like it didn't take you long to start leveling up. Like, from the beginning to this pose, it's like it feels like your posing really improved. And what's really interesting, you guys probably know Harrison for a lot of his landscape stuff, and yet we're seeing all of this early character work. So do you think originally, like when you started out, you were way more driven to produce characters and get into that?
Well, like when I started art, like everyone wanted to draw like characters, and like characters were so everything. Like even till now, like everyone wants to do character design, everyone wants to do this cool looking character.
Yeah.
But and that really inspired me then. But growing older, I was like, I wasn't so sure if I really wanted to do that.
Mm,
I
mm.
really, I really wasn't so sure. And like I started having this inclination towards color for a bit,
Oh,
and
right.
that drove me like like you driving like a mad scientist saying like what I go all ham colors and somewhat neglect the characters for a bit. So that's what has been happening, and from there
Yeah.
I transitioned into like making more environment focused. Right now it's even crazy. Right now it's more architecture focused. Like maybe tomorrow I could just go into just designing interiors. Who knows?
Yeah. And I mean, that's such an interesting thing because I felt like early on, with myself, I was interested in characters as well, but I noticed that as time went by and I started experimenting with environments and things, I also started to lean heavily towards the fun of creating a very complex image. And when I look at your
Mhm.
artwork now, I feel like that is definitely something that I see in your work as like these landscapes, but you're putting so much love and attention into them. You have all this color information, and I'm gonna definitely overlay some of your work here as I'm talking because like
Yeah.
the audience needs to know, man, this guy's so good, man. He's so good. So can you
Oh,
speak?
so
Can you,
grateful.
can you speak to a little bit about what is it about landscape design that has you now environment work now? Like why are you still doing it? Like what is it that keeps you interested?
It's funny because like you may feel like it's just landscapes and like landscapes have all been painted, right? Like but in reality I feel like nothing can beat nature, in my
Mm,
opinion though. Like
mm.
nothing can beat nature, like, and it's like you think you have it all figured out and tomorrow you find it, you go outside and find something else again that you never thought about. You get right?
Mm.
And like I feel like environments and landscapes tend to speak more about the culture of the people that are around there,
Yeah, that's
like
true.
just the architecture and like how they've been able to interact with the spaces around them.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's a conversation between man and like the space around them, like all that. and
Yeah.
that has just been like fascinating for me personally.
Yeah, I
For me
mean,
personally,
there,
exactly.
there's so much richness there because if you imagine different parts of the world, not only do you have, the set dressing in the form of the cultural architecture, but you also have indigenous plants. You also have the way people like to lay out roads or the cars they drive. Like, there's just so much richness. I actually never thought about it that way. That's actually really, really cool. I like that way of
Yeah,
thinking about it.
yeah. It's crazy because if you look like for example like just Nigeria, the country I'm from,
Mm,
like there's a section of like the country that is just like you could literally walk into a desert, right? Because like it
mm,
just bleeds into the desert, right? And
hmm
like that area is so hot, and there's like a section that is like it's like a tropical river, like all green and like all green and flat landscape. Like there's a section that has like all green and hilly, right? And like all this meshed together, and like there's some section that's just only red earth. And like who like is that shit just beautiful, man? It's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
beautiful.
And
And
everyone's country has some of that beauty to give, right? It's really up to us to kind of
exactly right.
what's cool. And like
Exactly.
as an environment painter, like I also notice like when I look at your paintings, you're exaggerating all the time. You're pushing stuff, whether it's color, whether it's shape, whether it's the composition itself, like the idea, maybe it's a castle or a lighthouse or whatever it might be. Like even with your professional work, like I can see you're constantly trying to find ways to push the shape. Is that something you gravitated to naturally and then you found yourself like working in projects that started asking you to do that kind of stuff?
Um, I wouldn't say like it was because of a certain project. I feel most times like like when you work on some projects, you tend to pick things that go along with your personality, right? Over time.
Mm,
Like let's say I was working with you on something and you had a specific way you wanted maybe the colors to feel.
mm,
Like and I really learned from that. Like I just picked that and imitate. So like over time, over some projects, like I've been able to pick things that I really love and push and like double down on that. You get me? And that has like really made that's really like that really helps has helped me improve
yeah,
personally.
yeah,
And I personally love to push color. Like
yeah,
although like it's cool to have like realistic color, but sometimes just push it like okay, why don't you just push it based off of temperature or based off of something like
yeah.
just to give you a new feeling entirely.
I wanted to ask you about that. You say often that you really love color. Like, where has that love come from? Is that just maybe some of your like African influence, or is it something that over time you developed and then kind of fell in love with?
Or like it's obviously not it's something over time.
Mm,
It's
mm,
been over time because I started like working with comic books, right? And like you take this beautiful, properly drawn page and you like try to um you try to bring out the emotions and the actions through colors and over time like I started getting way more crazy about it. I was like, okay, you know what, let's try and push this from just a comic page and say if you could do a landscape or something like that. And that's just been knack for it for me. And that has really helped me improve my colors basically.
yeah.
That's
Uh,
why I've been into colors more.
Yeah, and I see like you've been drawing and painting for such a long time. I think you and I probably got started around the same time, and around that era of art and digital art, a lot of the art coming out was line art that had like comic book style coloring to it. People were really into the airbrushing and creating the effects, and like even people started dabbling with 3D inside comic books, which was so crazy and weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I almost feel like that influence early on may have been, like you were saying now, you got so influenced by that early stuff that I think it has this
Yeah,
long term effect. And it kind of
yeah,
shows like even like a small trend in the industry kind of lasts a long time. Like it can live inside you and just kind of grow. Just cool, kind of cool.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And I feel like most times people should be true to themselves and like what they really like and just go with it,
Yeah.
like and just go with it. Like you who knows like who you doing that thing, how much you like you obviously mutate, but that little thing, just always remember like what made you start this,
Absolutely.
or really made you start it.
Absolutely. So, taking a look at a bunch of your paintings, one thing that stands out to me is you're always including some kind of character, and typically speaking, that character is a broccoli, like a piece of
Oh
broccoli.
yeah,
Like, what's up
yeah,
with the
that crazy
broccoli,
dude.
man? Tell us what's up with the
So
broccoli.
Oh, that crazy dude. So it's funny because like now that I speak about the broccoli, like I've abandoned him for a bit because like oh well I'm dabbling in some other things right now, but that character spawned out from me wanting to add. You know when you like people used to tell you, oh, like you should totally add in characters to your scene. You know, like, totally
Hmm.
adding characters to speak more. I was like, okay, you know, like you people are all complicated. I would just join a broccoli there, like because I felt like I had not seen a broccoli character. I had not never seen like I'd never seen. Yeah, you've probably seen mushrooms as characters, right?
Yeah.
And you've probably seen maybe onions or cactus, right? But I was like, I've never seen this broccoli as a character. I was like, and it's a very very beautifully shaped vegetable. If you think about like the proportions are like so good. Like you have this big circle and you have this small cylinder here, or you can have this small circle and you have this big cylinder. Like it all depends, and it's really crazy. So like I push that. I give this dude some legs. I make him crazy. Like just train into any situation. Like maybe he could be that more tomorrow. He could be that later. I don't know. Who knows? It's just been fun. It's
Yeah.
just been fun to explore that.
Yeah, and you know, there's this meme on the internet when you see characters inside landscapes, and everybody says, "Oh, there's a stick man, right? The stick man, the guy who's
Yeah,
walking through the landscape holding this giant stick." And
it's
here
the
you
game,
are,
man.
you're like, "Hey, screw the stick man. Let's actually make the man the stick. You know,
Yeah,
turn him
exactly,
into like
exactly,
a
exactly,
broccoli." I think
exactly,
that's so
exactly.
cool. Like, who knows? I think like as your art tends to, you know, become more popular now, I'm sure you're gonna start seeing other fruit, you know, showing up in people's
I mean,
paintings.
yeah, yeah, maybe who knows? Like, but it's cool. It's like one of those things. Like, if it happens, then that's solid,
Yeah, it's kind of
That's
cool.
solid.
Like it's like a signature now, right? It's like, hey, have you ever seen a broccoli?
Maybe the next ones will be like, hey, have you ever seen a Brussels sprouts? Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So I want to speak a little bit to some of the popularity you've gained in recent years. I know from my own experience of doing one of the ArtStation challenges when I had the time that they can be incredibly difficult and can be quite demanding in terms of time and resources and things like that. But sometimes you get some really cool perks, like you get, you know, art directors from those particular companies looking at your stuff or whatever. So if for those of you who don't know, Harrison entered the King. I think it's called the King of. Was it the something of King
Like
Arthur?
you're talking about, oh,
Yeah,
okay, you're talking
yeah,
about the Legend of King Arthur.
yeah. The
Yeah.
Legend of King Arthur challenge. Harrison entered that competition and started producing artwork. And if you wouldn't mind telling everybody, I think you came second. You got the silver. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. So could you tell us a little bit about that experience in general?
Like taking the challenge was funny for me because like I'd never tried like a certain pipeline before.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to challenge. Like, it's a challenge, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're going in here, like, me personally, I go in there with the mentality to just, like, challenge myself and just make new artwork and learn something new from the process you get, right?
yeah,
And
amazing.
taking, yeah, and taking that, I was just like, you know what? How do I interpret this in a different way?
Mm, mm,
And thinking about, like, ArtStation really shared, like, resources for people to read and whatnot. And one thing that kept on popping up was like, oh, there's always a joust or there's a fight or something. I'm like, okay, you know what? I've never seen like apart from like the Merlin series, right? Like you see
hmm.
like the joust in arena every time. I never seen any of that. So I was like, I'll try this. And like I looked at everything that had been done before. Like, like let's think about from a completely different angle.
Yeah,
I've not seen a joust. Like maybe there have been, but I had not seen one like focusing on like the arena, like making it feel like a coliseum or something,
yeah,
like
totally.
the Johnson exactly, and like because I had seen a movie. I can't remember the name.
Was that one with
I can't remember the name.
Heath Ledger? That's the one I remember.
Yep, the one with Heath Ledger. Exactly that one.
The one we
That
can't
one.
remember except for Heath Ledger.
Yeah, we can remember. I wish I could get the name now. The one with Heath Ledger, like
Something
where he
Knight, I
was,
believe.
yeah, where he was like he was a con guy. He was never really a knight. He just went out to
Oh, A
try to
Knight's
remember the
Tale.
name. A Knight's Tale. That's it. I
Yeah.
saw it. I was totally blown away. Like,
2001.
wow.
That's old school.
That's old school. It was like so fun. Like when I was watching this, I was like, you know what, take that and
Hmm.
make it more fantasy, blow it out of proportion a little bit. I just enjoy myself. And that's what I did. Like nothing super extra. Like
Yeah.
that's how I think about it. I couldn't do any other fancy things. Like, okay, you know what, let's just make this feel look good, and I went with that. And lucky enough, like I from the process I did learn a new way of tackling environments, which was like totally awesome. Like normally before I would probably just like draw the entire scene first, like then design. Why I did the reverse, like design every individual element first, which was like the call outs, and place that into the scene. More
Yeah.
like Lego blocks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, more like Lego blocks, and kind of works for me. And that's what I've been doing like professionally for a while now.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting to do it that way because often it's not often that we get to reverse build something, to have
Yeah,
the Lego
exactly,
blocks
right?
first. Often it's like, hey, I need this really complex scene, go paint it. You're like, and
Exactly,
then you
right?
have to collect like real world reference. You don't have time to figure out the shapes or the color. But I think the way you did it was so powerful because I think you solved a lot of early problems in what you were trying to show, and then when you tied it all together, it looked so good.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I think that's been a problem with, like for me personally, like I don't know how to see the final. I need to like if this like a room filled with boxes, right?
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, what type of boxes? Let's figure out the type of boxes. I'm like, well, what's the shape of the room? They'll figure that out. Then I'm like, okay. Then I put that all in, and okay, how do we make this shit look better? Or how do we make it look cooler? And put in light and color and all that stuff. And like, what
Hmm.
color of boxes do we have? Like all that. But I know there are like some really amazing artists that just say we want boxes in the room and just give you this awesome room with boxes. But I know that I'm sorry to disappoint you guys. I have to take it little by little,
Yeah.
before finalizing anything.
Absolutely. I don't know why, but when you say room full of boxes, I think of that storage unit in Indiana Jones where they keep all the artifacts because it's like full of
Exactly. You see?
such a cool room. It's like, oh, I want to design that.
Exactly, and like I just said that, and it could be anything. It could be the Indiana Jones one. It could be ammunition. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But like, what type of boxes are we talking about? Like, so I just want to figure that out first,
Yeah.
or how large is the room. Then I figure out that later. Then I'm like, well, how do we arrange this? Is it vertically, or is it in a staff shape that we design the boxes? Then we
Yeah.
figure that out. We just know
Yeah.
what the boxes are and what the room is.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about right now is such a testament to the fact that you're just built to be a concept artist because you're thinking of the story, the concept, like why is this thing there? What does it mean that it's there? Like
Exactly,
I noticed
exactly,
that
right?
one of the biggest differences between illustrators and concept artists is that concept artists like to start with a really cool idea, like a small idea, and then they go, but what happens if? And then they start
Yeah,
expanding on that
exactly,
idea until they have this fresh
exactly.
idea and then they go and try paint that. It's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I'm still learning on that, and like it's you always have to improve yourself and learn about all the cultures to be able to verify like what really works and what doesn't work. Like who knows what happened, but it brings a lot of new results anytime you explore the
Exactly.
unknown.
Exactly. And how much time we get, being a professional artist, like how much time we get to give ourselves to kind of just try new things and come up with new ideas. Like half the time you're on a job, it's like deadline, 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 and you have to like rush to get this seemingly like original idea out, right? But you haven't been given enough time to kind of dive deep. I think a lot of us suffer from that like pain of like, damn, I wish I had more time to like figure something out.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So
Like
mhm.
like for me now, it's like I don't have more and enough time to be able to execute the final, which is really annoying because the final that really speaks, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
talked about all these cool ideas, and you're like, oh, you really need to show it now because you're not going to be there to explain what ideas you have or you
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
That work has to speak for itself. So that's
Yeah.
been something I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, it's like you finish a painting and you just want to say, "Hey, there's a finished painting. If you need me, I'll be in my room, like finishing it." It's like while no one's looking, you're like finishing the painting. It's like, "Hey, it works. We
Exactly.
can put it in the
Exactly.
game. That's great. You go do that while I finish the painting." So
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think has been maybe some of the biggest contributors to your growth as an artist? Like some mentality stuff, or maybe training. What do you think that is for you?
That's a good question, and it's a large one to answer.
Because
Maybe
I
maybe we
mean,
should make maybe we should have another interview to answer this question. What do you think? It's like a
Yeah,
soon off.
yeah, the training. We'll just do a montage and just have you lifting weights and
Exactly. It's like,
I think we should do
or
it.
maybe we'll have this broccoli lifting weights. Who knows?
Oh, so good. It's already themed. I love it. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly, right? Exactly, right? Well, the one thing I would always say is mileage.
Mm,
Yeah, like people should always put in work. Like me personally, like still feel like I still need to put in a lot of work to improve on certain things. But and there are a lot of artists that have inspired me. I can't even start calling names because it's a shit ton, like a
yeah,
ton,
yeah.
a ton, and like. But the one thing that I could say for now, right now, is like I've been looking at way older animated movies and
Mm,
that have been able to stand the test of time.
yeah,
Because it's funny about this one thing about movies, like they may come now and everybody forgets about them.
yeah.
So I've been going back to like old Ghibli movies at the moment and just pulling from there, studying them, like looking at what how they tackle, they try to reconstruct or deconstruct how they probably painted or made the background illustrations or anything like that. So that's what I've been studying a lot for now. Like although there are a lot of contemporary concept artists that
Mm,
have been inspiring, yeah, and for sure, there's a ton of that out there. Like I
mm,
can't start calling names. There are a lot of artists that I send my work to for feedback, friends, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what really works is the mileage. You have to put in the work. You have
yeah.
to put in the work.
Thank you.
You,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to put in the work. It's not like 1 year will probably not be enough. Obviously, not be enough. Like you may, but like you just need to learn how to learn. That's it. Just learn how to learn.
Yeah, and then the rest you can kind of give yourself. It's like teach a man to fish, kind of vibe.
Exactly, right? Exactly,
Mm, mm.
exactly. And talk to other artists, get a mentor. Any of that will totally work. Hence, you put in the work. If you don't, then there's no point.
Yeah,
There's no point
absolutely.
going down this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, the amount of time that, especially young students, even from other interviews I listen to from other educators, talk about all the time, like, hey, why have I got these students who are just so impatient to break into the industry? It's like, hey, when I graduate, I want the best job, and it's like, you're you're still young, you're still learning. Like, there's so much complexity to building great art that yes, of course, there's the money side of things, and everybody's worried about that. But like when I was growing up, like I don't think any of my colleagues. Yes, we wanted the job, but it didn't have to be the greatest job right away, right? It just had to be a job,
Hmm. Hmm.
and there was a certain aspect of like, okay, how do I leverage where I am? What kind of freedoms do I have? Whether it's time, whether it's money in the bank, like whatever. Like I think you and I know that having trained ourselves, a lot of the investment we put into ourselves comes from our own pocket, comes from our own decisions. And
Yep.
like when you see these young artists who are just like, man, I want to get into this industry like tomorrow. And I'm like, calm down, man. Like you haven't even figured out what you like to paint yet, right? Like I'm looking at your old work and it's like you got all this character work. You had to go through all of that work to arrive to where you are today and become the artist that you are. And along the way, by doing all that work, like it's so obvious that all those skills have translated into what you're doing now.
Yeah, because I think it has to do with the society we live in now, where everybody wants this instant gratification. I don't even want to rant about that, but in reality, right now, I know people just want to get like young folks see what's happening out there, and most of the artists they're looking up to have been doing this for maybe like 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And you want to get to that level tomorrow. I'm like, okay, that's awesome, but
Mm,
you need to be realistic here.
mm,
It's
mm.
it's a marathon, not a sprint. You get right.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
if you get it right now, then what happens tomorrow? You get right. Like you need to go through that process, and once you go through that process, like you would appreciate wherever you get to eventually. And like secondly, like I'm not thing, I feel like a lot of like younger folks should have like people or peers that they work with or that inspire them,
Yeah.
that inspire them to grow. Because like when I was starting out, I had a lot of friends that we all did stuff together. Right now we've all like diversified and moved on to doing specific things. Like
Hmm.
and it's crazy because like the energy that we had when we were learning is
Mm.
what has pushed us to continue right now.
Yeah.
Like everybody has eventually owned owned their own path, and it's been awesome. It's been
Yeah.
awesome. And I
Absolutely.
think a lot of people should do that. A lot of youngsters
Yeah.
should do that. I still
Absolutely.
do that. I still do that. Like have friends I paint with every time, talk
Mhm.
and send back work, and back and forth and feedback, and it's so good.
Yeah, so good, man. Highly recommend. I mean, it's a little bit difficult in the current times, I think, for people to start networking and stuff and get out. But if you can do it through whatever medium is possible, whether it's ArtStation or Instagram is
Yeah,
so powerful now.
yeah,
Like,
even Discord channels, yeah,
yeah,
Discord
Discord
channels, a
channels
ton
is
of them.
are amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. A lot of them are are completely free. I mean, you can just join them and have a community
So
right
free.
away and make friends. And yeah, it's so good. So I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you, do you still have any like specific goal type stuff when it comes to your career, like things you still want to do or achieve?
Right now, like right now, right now I'm so crazy about like rewriting what um I don't want to use the word rewrite. I think right now I'm so obsessed with how African art has been portrayed in the entertainment industry,
Hmm.
like how Africa has been portrayed in the entertainment industry. I did not want to go on a rant about that, but I feel like there's a lot of reorientation to be done.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Of anyone who has the authority to have an opinion on African art, I think it's you, man. Like you're living here, and you're in the midst of it, and you're working on these projects. So please let us know what you think.
Oh yeah, it's the authority. It's funny, right? But like it's like when Japanese culture held entertainment industry by the throat, right? It's like everybody wanted to do this cool Japanese looking stuff, right?
Right.
And if you did something wrong from the Japanese culture, it's going to show through that you do not know what you're doing. Like you don't merge Japanese culture with Chinese culture. It's like they're two
Mm,
different things.
mm, mm, mm.
But although they are still Asian countries, but they're two different things. Like
Right.
it's okay to just broadly say Asian architecture. It's okay to
Right.
say that because like they kind of bleed through, and I think that's the same problem. Like entertainment industry now is facing when it comes to like African themed stuff. It's like, oh, it's African, and I think that boils down to the core fundamental of what like entertainment design is all about right now.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning this. Like, and I know a lot of people, it's more like, oh, the cool factor, but the cool factor with
Mm.
the wrong connotation. You get it, right? It's just like, hey, look cool, hey, look cool. Like, does this horn look cool? Like, okay, it looks cool. Does this mask look cool? Like, okay, but why did they wear that mask?
Yeah.
Why did they wear this horn? Why
Yeah.
did they do that? Like, what specific culture does that? And
Yeah.
like once you understand these things, it's going to be easy to deconstruct and break them apart and make something and push the not just the visuals but like the meaning behind this.
Yeah.
It's like do you turn a Hindu temple into a car park? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
that's wrong, right? It's generally wrong because like are you going to turn the temple again? And I see that a lot, and people just need to, and I understand why, but people need to dig deeper and not just do some surface looking cool stuff.
100%. And I mean,
So that's my personal goal right now, like to learn more about that and
mhm.
hopefully try to reorientate through my art. Like, oh, this is what this is supposed to be. It looks cool, but it is still correct, not just cool.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And I wonder why it seems to be that way. I do wonder, like, if you look at old Hollywood movies and you look at their interpretation of what was Chinese or Japanese, often you would hear people say things like, "Oh, this karate master is coming to town," and it would be like Bruce Lee, and you're like, "Wait a second, like it's not karate, it's kung fu, right?" And like there's that
Yeah, yeah.
disconnect. But I think there's a early stage that happens in culture, uh, new cultures that come into entertainment where people don't really know what that side of the world is offering in terms of specifics, and they just kind of generalize. And I wonder if that's happening to Africa right now, because Africa as a continent is now being put on the map in terms of entertainment, whether it's, the cool factor of like something we've never seen before. It's so fresh. And then you also
Mm-hmm.
have, a lot of productions happening here now. You and I have been a part of that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
trending. It's definitely trending. And I feel like with time, we're going to see more and more specific productions that maybe you work on, that we get to have like really specifically, like maybe some really cool Nigerian design, maybe something like, one of our neighbors is
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. It's I like, and that's like what I'm really happy about that a lot of the productions are happening here, and like hopefully over the next couple of years, like to be booming, right? But and it's funny because like I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and it's like you have, for example, I'll use Europe as an example, right? Like the culture in Britain is certainly different from the one in France, and certainly
Mm,
different than the one in Italy, right?
mm,
And even in Italy itself, like the culture of the northern Italians is different from that of
exactly.
the southern Italians.
Mm,
Although they all bleed in, like
mm,
there are a lot of similarities, right? But
mm,
they're still different.
mm.
And like the Scandinavian countries too, like it's still different from like, the other parts of Europe.
Yeah,
But in Africa, it's a different thing entirely, where you have like I'll just put it simple. It's like in one country you could have 10 different tribes, and they are all different. There's nothing similar about them.
yeah.
And
Nothing at
the
all. Like
moment
not even language, nothing. Like nothing.
nothing similar, the only thing is
Yeah,
probably similar, like we're all black skinned people, right?
yeah.
Like maybe and maybe like food, like obviously food, like will be a lot of similarities with food.
Mm,
But when it comes to like visuals, like there's
yeah,
really nothing similar.
yeah,
And and I know like most of them have not been put on the map.
yeah.
So that's why it's hard for people. That's why it's easy for people to just screw things up and not know what is. But it's okay, like, but I think that's why like we African artists that are here now
Yeah, absolutely.
can help change that narrative, yeah, through
Absolutely.
entertainment.
And it's so exciting because of the diversity within those cultures, gives us so much visual library language from each,
Bro,
like
it's crazy,
like
man.
the different just different textiles. I think textiles is such a big thing in Africa, just looking at different textiles from different tribes, cultures, countries, where you start to say, oh, this one's more square, this one's more triangle, this one has thinner lines, this one has red, and it's suddenly it's completely a different game.
Yeah, and it's funny because like when they mentioned textiles, like I always assumed, and this is like because I still learn, like I always assumed that like there's this tribe in Nigeria called Yoruba, right? I always assumed like the fabric that comes from them is called adire, right? That the patterns are always in a certain way, like it has to be lines or something. But making further research, I found out that no, they actually stylized and abstracted realistic forms into the patterns.
Mm,
And the moment you know why and the forms that they stylize, it's easier for you to push this culture forwards. Like, okay, what if I take that and make it more, with more modern materials? That
mm-hmm,
means I still retain what makes that culture,
mm-hmm,
but bringing it in 2020 again, right? And it just makes so much sense. Like once
yeah,
people learn about these things, like I think a lot of art has to like concept art and art generally has to be more of like history and culture than actually just what's cool and what's not cool. Like that
absolutely.
is okay. That
Yeah,
is okay. But if you wanted to have more than the coolness factor, if you wanted to mean something, if you wanted to push our our lives forward, like let's just be more than what it is. I think we really need to dig deeper.
yeah. And it's really interesting to see a lot of big AAA titles. They kind of fall into two schools. One is we're going completely science fiction, and then that's fine. You go and do the sci-fi thing. Or
Mm-hmm.
we're in the world of realism. And in the world of realism, whether it's film or animation or games, we can lean into real world culture. And I think that's where the benefit of playing with these design languages and taking things like textiles and applying them to a broader perspective, like an environment piece, right? If you're given a specific
Mm-hmm.
room and it has to look a specific way, and the furniture belongs to maybe this arch villain, how do we depict, the aggressive nature of the culture? How do we show that? And there's so much
Mm-hmm.
potential there that exists in the real world. We don't even have to go into fantasy. And I think a lot of the mistake that youngsters make is they go, okay, everything has to be spiky, as a generic approach to solving
Yeah.
the problem. And it doesn't always have to be that
Yeah.
way. It can actually be so much deeper and more fun if you do a little bit of historic and cultural research.
Yeah, like, and it's funny because like you do all this historic and cultural research, and you know all this shit, but your art is not still good enough. Then it's a waste, right?
Of course, so you need both. You need skill.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Is like you can be as nerdy as you like about anything, but if you haven't got the raw fundamental skill to deliver these ideas, it's so difficult.
Then it's useless.
Yeah,
Then it's
absolutely,
useless. So
absolutely.
you have to pick your battles. Like, do you hone your skills well? Then you go and learn the history, or do you do it side by side? how do you want to do it, but your skills need to be able to present your ideas properly, and
Absolutely.
which is really the most important thing.
Exactly. So this is actually a perfect segue for our last question, which is, in your own experience, based on everything you've been through and where you've landed up today, what kind of advice would you give to a young student who wants to get into this industry today? Like maybe an approach or a mentality or something that you've experienced that you don't hear often.
Hmm. That's deep. We should have another podcast too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I know this probably sounds like what everybody keeps on saying, like, oh, you should put in the work, you should do all that, but at the end of the day, like I think it's just simple. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm, mm,
Like it's a marathon. Like just like I can't flog on that too like a lot. It's like simple, and I think people should also at the same time be true to themselves.
mm-hmm,
Like it's easy to jump on trends. It's so
mm-hmm,
easy,
mm-hmm.
but be true to yourself and always tell yourself like what made me start this thing. Like if you tell like yourself that, like I think we're all different. Fundamentally, we're all different people.
Mm-hmm.
But if if we're different, why try to copy the next guy? Like why try to be like the next person? Like you can get inspired by the next person, but you don't have to be the next person. You get what I mean? But like people should just be true to themselves, like artists and younger artists, and like put in the work.
Yeah,
Put in the work.
absolutely.
Like I say, it's funny because like I'll use me as myself as an example. I was making comic book colorings for the longest time ever, and like some really shitty comic book colorings. Man, I was like, okay, I really want to shift this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I started talking to my friend that was already into painting, and I was like, dude, you should just make the studies, just do it. Like, but at the same time, why are you studying this thing? Like, apply your studies so you grow faster, which made sense, but which does actually make more sense. Like, you study something, apply it. Study something, apply.
Yeah.
But when I started, like, I wish I could show like the first paintings I did in 30 days because I was never comfortable painting.
Yeah.
It was a pain.
Yeah.
It was a super pain. Like,
Yeah.
and the first 30 days was horrible. Like, I really wanted to cry. 30 days turned to 12 months, right?
Yeah.
Like 30 days down to 12 months of shitty paintings, like all
Yeah.
shitty paintings.
Yeah.
12 months down to 3 years of painting, and you start picking up habits. Like most times you pick up bad habits, which is going to be bad to let go of, which is going to be
Yes.
hard to let go of. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
But over time, you would certainly learn something for sure. Well, for sure, you obviously on the other side, like deconstructing and looking for ways to improve. And secondly, like I think another thing should be like people like artists, younger artists learn to observe, go outside to paint, go outside to draw. Not
Mm-hmm.
every time, not every time from photos.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
and so people that want to paint, like just learn to draw. Man. Right now I've gotten back to drawing, which makes more sense. Like I'm so happy.
Yeah.
We just learn to draw because
Yeah.
it's super important.
It is, eh?
Because like that, yeah, that way like there's some marks, like you could just put in some abstract marks and it just suggests the form completely and you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it,
I hope that helps anybody.
I think it does, and it's great to hear your perspective on that, and I think that it is a marathon, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
man, like phenomenal advice. Quite honestly, I couldn't have said it better. So yeah, man, is there anything else you want to end off with here today, or should we say goodbye to our friends at home?
Oh yeah, I think we should say goodbye to them. That should be okay. But
Yeah,
apart from the fact that I still need, I maybe we should invite the broccoli over next time. Who knows?
yeah, absolutely. Sounds good.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
man. So thank you so much, Harrison, for your time today. And for anybody who's interested in Harrison's work, first of all, you can go to ArtStation, check out the challenges page, and look up the Legend of King Arthur challenge, and take a look at the finalists. You'll see Harrison's work there. Besides that, I'm going to include a bunch of links below in the description for you guys to take a look. And do yourself a favor, if you like this interview, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll chat to you pretty soon, Harrison.
yeah, man. Okay.
All right.
Have a nice one. Hopefully, when all this is over, we'll eventually meet in Cape Town. Something.
Oh, I'd love that, man. I'm gonna fly you over. How's that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's sweet. I'll take that. Take
All
that.
right. Thanks so much, Harrison.
Have
Have
a
a nice
nice
day.
one, man. Yeah. Bye,
Cheers.
man.